You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hello, Alex here. I am back for day 13 of our Flowing with Your Cycle series, and so excited. We're almost to our halfway point. This, really actually kind of evolved from where I had originally intended it to be, and I think originally I was going to just do shorter episodes on topics. And what I realized as I was creating is that a lot of the things that come up in the cycle that our body is primed for are really big parts of our lives. They're just a big deal, and I think we get caught up in the day-to-day doing of stuff, right? And that's why I've had so much talk on here about what is it that it's important to do, and what can be let go, and where are we really leading ourselves, and what are we creating in our lives, because there's a lot that can happen when we're mired in the weeds of like, oh, what did I eat? What did I not eat? How did I mess up my workout? Like, how did I yell at the kids, right? And I didn't answer that email. It's just a lot of stuff. And the stuff, when we're in the weeds with that, it's important. There's real life, and then there's practicality of it. And when our focus is primarily on that, we just kind of feel like we're standing in one place, spinning our wheels, spending a lot of energy, and not getting what we really want. So then when I started looking at the concepts, this is where the episodes really expanded. And I still, it's going to be my goal to keep them still on the shorter bite-sized side, just because, when you're listening every single day, potentially of your cycle, and I listen to these too, actually, because even though we can realize a lot of things in the moment, it's really easy to forget. And that one of the things I talked about recently on Instagram was I have my list of non-negotiables for various times, right? So when you're sitting somewhere and you're settled and you're calm and you're peaceful, we can see the bigger picture of our lives. And then when we're all worked up and things feel bad, it's so easy for things to go out the window. And that's why I actually come back to this, is that in the moment, even though I had the knowledge and the knowing of it at some time, doesn't mean that I'm 100% always living in that space. And so there's nothing wrong with that. And for that reason, I'll still try to keep them more on the bite-sized side. However, these really are just such expansive topics that impact so many parts of our lives, that when we start with health and really achieve the health goals that we want, we start to see just how much those same principles, the same things that we do to heal, are the exact same things we do for creating the relationships that we want, the kind of parents we want to be, the kind of business owners we're going to be, the kind of bosses or employees we want to be. It's not different, because we are the common denominator between all of it. Right, so day 13, we are really coming up to, if you have the standard 28-day cycle coming up to ovulation, we already had the chat about if it's shorter or longer, but generally speaking, this is where that feminine flow of creativity and creation as a concept is really highlighted and can be utilized as a creative power source in our lives, rather than using our cycle as something that's like, oh, I got my period and I feel like crap, and I curse it once a month and that's it. Right, so this is true creation at its best. And even if you're in my category, where so far at least, fertility has been a challenge, creation and feminine power is not always about the creation of children. It absolutely can be if we choose. It absolutely can not be if we don't want that. And whatever your relationship with it is, it can be expanded from just, can I create babies? Which is kind of where my head was at the time. I was like, oh no, that means something about me too. Well, I've created a business baby, and my life, my relationships baby, and my my evolutionary baby. It's all these facets of my life that I'm actively creating. So that creation power can be whatever it is that you're using it for, and is still a superpower no matter what. So when it comes to creation, there is a balance between kind of we create everything, which means that we can create the good, and we also play a role, we are co-creating the good, and we also therefore play a role in the badness that comes. Now, that doesn't apply to everything. Sometimes, things happen depending on how you look at things vibrationally and energetically. I'll leave it to you to decide how much you are driving that ship, but sometimes things can pop up that we really didn't intend to, and it's all still part of the creation process that is kind of categorizes our entire life, like the creation of our experience. Because even when things pop up that we don't expect and didn't necessarily feel like we asked for, the creation process of navigating through that in whichever way that we feel that we want to have control over, that is also a creation process. Right? And so creating and sitting with the creation that you're working on and what you have already created is really powerful. And for this topic, it's one thing, we already did some of the assessment. Now we know what we're working with. And some, like I'm saying, sometimes there are more positive, sometimes less positive ways that we feel about that. One of the fuel sources for further creation, and I say one of them because we've already talked about things like power, getting into your own power, allowing yourself to sense what you want and what feels best to you, right? So this is just one part of it, but one of the fuel sources at this time that really changes where we're standing so that we can approach things in a new way and create from a different space than where we have kind of automatically been creating from, is gratitude. And you've probably heard about this in a million different ways because there's a whole bunch of people saying the exact same thing, but essentially it's kind of the equivalent of beating yourself up. If we're really super down on everything that we have created and experience no gratitude or appreciation for even just how hard we try to do our best getting to that point, it ends up being pretty defeating. A lot of us are using guilting and shame and berating ourselves as a motivator, right? If you're like, if I don't identify just how bad I'm doing at that, then why would I won't know to fix it, right? And many of us, I think, were criticized a lot as kids, in an effort for our caretakers to push us to be our best. So it was very much, for many people, that is not always the case, that the intention behind it was in some way positive, but the actual experience of it was some on the spectrum of negativity, and for some of us it was pretty extreme. And so then we learn, well, if I really super get down on myself on how I'm eating or how I'm moving or what I'm doing in my business or how I'm raising my kids, then I'll feel so bad that I'll want to change, right? Now, as with all toolkits on any topic, it's not to say that we can't have multiple ways of motivating ourselves and getting to the point where we're like powerfully creating. So is sometimes taking an accurate look of what's happening and noting that we are not showing up in the way that we want, can that be motivating in some instances, on some topics, on some days? I think that yes. And maybe that's not true for you at all. Maybe for some of us it's more. Take it for what jives with you. But it's, to look at ourselves beating ourselves up and then say, I'm such a jackass for beating myself up, like, it's just more of it, right? So that's why, in that regard, I'm like, well, I could, say I'm never motivating myself that way again, but then sometimes I do, and then I feel guilty about it. Or I could just say, that's one tool in my toolkit. I've done that for a while. I do not enjoy it. I can, acknowledge that it is there and has helped me in some ways. Like, I berated my way through medical school and residency and was super hard on myself. Did that work? Yeah. I did really well. I had super high test scores. I did great. I, did residency at a good place. It worked. And that's why I'm not necessarily being like, well, let me never do that again. And yet, a lot of the negative outcomes that I've had come from doing that same thing, right? So in some scenarios, it worked for me. And then when I applied it to my whole life, it really caused problems in other areas. And so you can even find gratitude for the ways that you've behaved and patterns of behavior and things that you've done, because you acknowledge that they worked for you at that time and served a purpose, and that now they can just be an option on the menu, but they're not the only one, right? So what then does it look like to inject gratitude into it, really feel gratitude for yourself, and then feel how that impacts the energy that you have for creation? This is not something that I'm going to be able to tell you about and have you know, right? We can conceptually understand this, like, oh yeah, I guess I will feel better when I'm nice to myself or when I express gratitude. That's interesting. And then you go on with your day and do the same thing you've always done. But this one ends up being purely an experiential process at some point. Your understanding takes you to the buy-in that gets you to do it. The knowing comes from actually experiencing it and being like, oh, wait, so I really can acknowledge everything I've created, and I really can acknowledge the gratitude I hold for the components of it, how they've worked out for me, what they've created, what they push me to do, what they caused me to learn, what they highlighted to be true about myself right now. And even have gratitude for, hey, I'm sitting here doing this work because I believe in myself so much that I'm willing to approach myself differently and allow myself to grow into the person that I really want to be. And then pay attention to how you feel. That's really the whole deal of it. Gratitude you can do it in a million different ways. You can do it when you're standing at the grocery store in line. You could do it in bed when you first wake up, or when you're going to sleep. People like journaling lists or putting it in their notes on their phone, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But notice how you feel after. even if you can acknowledge something that you're going to work on and find ways of having gratitude of where you've been and the work that you're putting in to get going, note what that does to how you emotionally kind of sense into how you feel in that moment. And then also keep an eye out for what happens next. It's very interesting to do inner work like that and then have the experience of the world mirroring it back to us. And now, I don't know the mechanics of how that happens. There's all sorts of people having different versions of this and explanations, and that's not what this podcast is about. But it's really cool to start to correlate how we feel and how our life looks, and at some point having the realization that, like, wow, what I do in my own head, in my own heart, actually begins to impact where I am, what I do, and how things unfold for me. And once you have that, then you can begin to use things like being grateful to guide yourself to where you want to go, rather than trying to beat yourself up on the way to getting there. This is definitely one, it's a big one, and it's one to sit with, because it's, like I said, the experience of it is the most important part of this. It's not thinking about it or plan, like how to be grateful, right? A lot of times we want steps. It's like, just try some stuff, right? Whether you talk about it, whether you journal it, just random things that come to mind. And you don't have to put things on there that you think should be on there. If you're super annoyed with your partner, you're not saying that you're not grateful for your partner. But if that right then is going to be like, oh my gosh, well, that just pisses me off more, you can do this multiple times. You don't need to put that one thing that's going to get you all riled up onto the list today, right? Or if there's a topic that's really not going the way you want to go and you're like, I just don't feel the gratitude for that, do it on a different topic. It is totally fine, right? This is not to say you're going to put this list up on social media for everyone to see or show it to your family. It's just for you, as long as you want it to be just for you. If you're not sure, that's cool, but as long as it's just for you, then just put whatever you want to put on there, or say whatever you want to say, and see what happens. I would love, love, love to hear what your experiences are. These are some of my favorite stories to hear from you, because this link between internal work and external results is so magical and fun that it just every time lights me up. Because people are like, oh my gosh, I actually experienced appreciation for myself for the first time in a while, and then my partner brought me flowers home. They never do that, right? Or something like that, and they're just like, wow, that's my mirror. That just mirrored back to me what I actually thought, and how magical is that? And even if sometimes we're at a place where we're not able to acknowledge the magic of the world, and I've been there, and it just sometimes we're not there, then even the more tangible experience of I appreciate what I have and the role that I've played in it from a positive space, and then you make things unfold, right? It doesn't have to be someone pops up with something nice. Then from that place of feeling good, if you have appreciation for the effort that you've put in, even if it didn't go the way that you wanted, then you're much more likely than to put an effort into something that you don't know the outcome yet. Is it going to turn out good? Is it going to turn out, quote, bad? That part, gets a lot easier when we're well, I know from my past I've done this, and I'm really proud of myself for doing that. And oftentimes that puts us in a place to acknowledge what we learned from the outcome. It's now I'm a different person to put an effort into this, Now I'm not so down on, will I mess it up? Because I know I have the power to appreciate myself and learn things and make new choices from, essentially a new perspective or a new version of myself. And that stuff is honestly just as magical, right? It's fun when it like surprises us and is delightful because it's not something that we planned for. And it's also just as magical to be like, I made that happen because of some way I showed up for myself. So let's not discount either one at all. Whatever happens, it happens, but that's where, doing it and paying attention, doing it and paying attention, you get all the data. Now you know what it is like for you, because maybe your experiences will be a little different than mine, and then you keep going with that. All right, so gratitude, creation. We talked a lot about big things today. Please, please, please let me know. Keep me posted on what happens as you do this. I seriously love it. This is one of my favorite things to hear about, because it reminds me back, it kind of anchors me back to, I choose to believe this world is magical. It's not just like work hard and do hard things and like, struggle. I don't choose to believe that. And so like I then choose to look for the magic. And so as you participate in your life and share it with others, and if you should choose to share it with me, it's so cool and it jazzes me up. And this is where we start impacting each other in truly, truly transformative ways. All right. I love you. Have a great day. I will talk to you soon, and have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time being in gratitude and loving on yourself.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these pod classes helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.